In this video, we'll explore the technology of belief. What is a belief? It is an idea that we categorize as a foundation, that we establish as a fact or as a certainty, that we lay as groundwork. To believe something is very much like to pour concrete in a footing for a house. Once we establish a foundation of belief, we can start building on that belief. And the usefulness of the belief is determined by the solidness of the belief, how certain we are in the way that we form and pour and establish that belief. But its real usefulness is what it allows to be possible. For example, if you want to create more sales in burglar alarms, the belief that human beings are untrustworthy is a useful belief. You can pour that belief in, and based on that, you can then forecast a variety of different untrustworthy activities, and then you can proceed to invent a variety of alarms and solve those problems. And this is a useful belief for that objective. Once we believe something, we put it aside and as a root assumption and start examining other things in the context of that belief. So another way of thinking of a belief is as a thought that we're putting into the unquestioning file. Now, this is also the problem with belief as a technology. Its usefulness is that it can be set to one side and built upon, which is incredibly useful because the conscious mind cannot look at too many variables in a given moment. So if we're talking about 100 variables, that's just way too many variables for the conscious mind to digest and process. It's fine for a computer, but not the conscious mind. And so what's useful is to establish certain things and categorize them in a non-examined area, so that the conscious mind can focus on fewer variables that are in more question. For example, the belief that floors are solid, most of the time if they're in decent condition, is a useful belief because it allows us to walk on all kinds of floors and have our conscious mind on areas that are in more question. What's this person in front of me going to do next? That's a lot more uncertain than whether or not the floor will give way in the next moment. And so the belief, floors are solid, allows that question, that thought, to be categorized in a part of consciousness and a part of the brain that does not need to be questioned. Now, this is incredibly useful and incredibly dangerous. It's incredibly useful because anything that is highly habituated, meaning it functions the same way for long periods of time consistently, is very useful to put over in an unexamined area, simply because we lack processing power. And so if we're examining whether or not the floor is solid in the next moment, it's going to take up all the processing power that we have as a conscious mind. And we're not going to be examining, what's that person doing over there that, we may benefit from paying attention to. So thus, beliefs are useful, but they're not true. For example, we say the floor is solid, but as we come down to this subatomic level, we see that floors are made out of atoms, and atoms are not solid. And we could say, well, but it's an object. And we look at this atom and we see that the object is 99% space, and we say, well, it's really more accurately defined as space. But saying that the floor is not solid and that the floor is mostly space is not useful, because it doesn't allow us to predict the interaction of the body and the floor as accurately as the belief that the floor is solid. So even though it's not true, the belief that the floor is solid is more useful in predicting the future. And because it's a relatively consistent behavior or habit that floors have, we can recategorize it over into this other area. So beliefs are foundational thoughts that are assumed and can be built on with a fair amount of predictability. If they're useful beliefs, they're fairly predictable. Because the danger of any belief is that it's very similar to a dogma. And the problem with dogmas is that you can get stuck in them. And the reason you can get stuck in a belief, one reason, is that beliefs direct attention. And within the vast complexity of patterns around us, meaning there are infinite patterns of energy around us. For all practical purposes, we can't even get up to and remember 10,000 patterns. But there are literally billions of patterns of energy that we could see within a mile radius, within 1 mile of a human body. In fact, within 100 yards of a human body, there are more than 1 billion patterns of energy. The question is, can we see those billion patterns of energy? And in most cases, we cannot. Because what we've learned to focus on are certain patterns of energy. For example, this ring is a pattern of energy. There's also patterns of energy that make the ring. There's also patterns of energy in the air. There's every conceivable geometric shape in the space between objects, but we don't see them. We're not attuned to notice those patterns of energy. And so they're invisible to the conscious mind, again, the processing power limitation. But there are well over 1 billion patterns of energy within 100 yards of every human being on the planet. And those energies can be constructed in all kinds of different patterns, in all kinds of different time sequences and spaces and colors and dimensions. But we don't see 99% of them. I mean, you look at it and you could say, well, this is a triangle, here, here, and then you connect the dot. But if you didn't look for a triangle, if you didn't have a paradigm of a triangle, you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't even have that particular word if you didn't have a paradigm for a triangle. You'd just look and say nothing, or you'd say hand, and you wouldn't see different patterns of fingers or all the different lines that could connect each of the different dots in different ways. So there are all of these patterns, and what we believe, what we invest in, what we assume shapes the patterns that we see in the energy around us. And beliefs tend to be self-affirming. If you believe in triangles, you can look around and you can say, well, there's a triangle. Isn't that kind of a triangle right there? And this whole necklace has a kind of triangular shape and 2 eyes and a mouth. There's a triangle. But you wouldn't see that if you didn't believe in triangles. You say, no, that's not a triangle. Those are atoms vibrating. I believe in atoms. I don't believe in triangles. That's, you're just making that stuff up. And no, that's not what I see. I see that point is there. I don't even believe in points. That's some energy. There's some energy. Why are you connecting these bits? What about that energy over there? Because everything is ultimately interconnected. And so the issue with investing in a belief is that it predisposes us to see the evidence that confirms the belief that we invested in. And it does not predispose us to see the things that lead us to question our belief. As a result, we do not generally question our beliefs, and as a result, we do not find our way out of the maze or the prison created by the belief. Now, one of the most imprisoning beliefs that there is the belief that beliefs are true. I believe this and this and this, and my beliefs are true. Now, this takes the belief into, well, we're not quite in prison yet. The third belief is that truth is singular, objective, permanent, and unquestionable. In other words, that you have to figure out what the truth is, but once you have established the truth, singular, an objective fact, then that is an objective fact. And everyone else, because it's a singular truth, everyone else who sees it or believes it differently is wrong. So this triage of things, I have to find the truth, my beliefs are true, and the truth is objective and singular and can be depended on. This leads to a very particular form of myopia, but it also leads very deeply into this it leads very deeply into this confirmation bias, that this is the way it is, it's the only way it is, and either this is right or this is right. Now, you cannot have this particular conversation with somebody who has established these three beliefs as a foundation, because it's questioning that foundation. And it's the nature of beliefs if they are a belief, they're in the unquestioning portion of the brain. That's their whole purpose, is this is relatively solid, so let's stop questioning it. That allows me to look and question these other things. However, if we shift the foundational beliefs to everything contains a certain amount of truth, no truths are absolute, and that beliefs and putting things in the category of beliefs is useful in the understanding that when they get in the way of the realities that we want to create, that we may need to examine and reconfigure them in the same way that pouring a concrete foundation is very useful for building a particular house. But if you decide to build a different house, in the same area, you need to deconstruct or make amendments to the old house, and very possibly remove portions of the foundation or key walls as part of the reconfiguration of the new energy pattern. So beliefs are useful in that they allow you to build certain things upon them, and they may need to be reconfigured to allow you to build other things upon them that emerge as more valuable to you from time to time. Then the question becomes a more interesting one. The question becomes, what are you trying to build? Why are you trying to build it? And what beliefs would allow you to succeed at that particular result? What are you trying to build? Why are you trying to build it? And what beliefs would support you in creating and realizing that particular reality? Now, if the beliefs collapse, they have not been constructed adequately, just like if a concrete footing cracks, etc. They haven't been constructed adequately. But there are enough patterns in reality, all those billions of patterns in every 100 square yards or meters. There's enough patterns of reality to support most beliefs to some degree in certain contexts for certain purposes. And when your intention is to succeed, you can usually build a solid belief structure. If you want to succeed at a certain goal, you can find the beliefs that will support that particular reality. Now, beliefs in their polarities are useful for different things and often exist in the psyche simultaneously. And let's look at one of the usefulnesses of negative beliefs. As a child, if you have a bullying brother, for example, one of the phenomena of bullying older brothers is that you start to get happy or excited and then the older brother tries to knock you down, right? If you're miserable and lying on the floor in a heap after being bullied, the older brother kind of leaves you alone. But as soon as you get up off your feet and start to enjoy playing with your toy again or whatever it is, that's when the older brother is jealous or sees the opportunity to do the most damage and comes over and teases you or knocks your toy until you're a heap again. And so you, as a child, are going through this volatility state. You're feeling helpless and small and abandoned and lonely and worthless. And then you get over it, you recover, and you come back to your toy. And as soon as you start playing again, then you feel helpless and worthless and lonely, and because you're being bullied again. And you've got a high volatility rate, basically, from feeling good about yourself to feeling terrible, to feeling good about yourself to feeling terrible, feeling good about yourself to feeling terrible. And the law of mass is in effect, which means that the bigger one is controlling the dynamic. So statistically speaking, bullied 5-year-old, bullying 12-year-old, the 12-year-old is going to be able to rip the toy out of the 5-year-old because of the law of mass. The 12-year-old is bigger. The 12-year-old can anticipate. The 12-year-old can outrun the 5-year-old. And so you've got a dynamic where if the 12-year-old is feeling sadistic and frustrated enough that they want to transfer their helplessness onto the 5-year-old younger brother, they're probably going to do it. They're going to succeed. And the 5-year-old may try and outrun, may try and do this, may try and that. But at a certain point, the helplessness, the disappointment, the uncertainty of when am I going to finally be able to play with my toy, reaches a point that is very difficult for the psyche to tolerate in its volatile state. And so the 5-year-old creates a belief that says, I will never be happy, because this belief allows them to regain control. It's a technology. It's a useful belief for, in this case, volatility management. So the child is going up and down, up and down, up and down, and they don't have a foundational belief. They just see what's happened, or they're unconscious. But as soon as they decide, I will never be happy, and I will never forgive the world for, giving me a older 12-year-old brother who torments me, and people are cruel, and a few beliefs like that. Now what the child does is stays down. They stay determined. They focus on getting combat skills. They do not happily play with their toys, so they don't go up, so they can't be knocked down. Maybe they set up some dynamics to take revenge on the older brother. But what they've done with that belief, see, it's not true that they'll never be happy. It's not true that people are always cruel. It doesn't matter, meaning there's truth in it. You could say it is true that people are cruel. You could say it is true that I'll never be happy. But it's not objective true any more than it would be if you said I will always be happy and people are wonderful, but it's also true, etc. But what it does is it manages volatility. And for a time being, you can then work within this limited framework where you do not expect to be happy, so you're not feeling helpless when that's taken away from you. You aren't happy because you've believed that you will never be happy. But I'm never going to be happy. People are jerks. My parents lie. They don't believe me, all this stuff. And these beliefs manage volatility, and allow for regulation and engagement with the reality that's there in the current moment. Now, those beliefs lie dormant as the person grows up. Once they become a 18-year-old, their older brother can no longer beat them up. Well, they try one time maybe, and a good punch in the nose, and they stop it because it's no fun to beat someone up who can fight back and is willing to. And so then the reality shifts. Now that belief is foundational for such situations. There is one side of the technology of it's left there in the body and in the psyche for such situations where now a boss is beating you up, or an older coworker, not beating you up physically anymore, but beating you up financially. Getting, this coworker gets the best jobs, and then they get the bonuses because they had the best jobs, and that type of dynamic. And so it's no longer a physical beating up, but if you're in that same thing where no matter what I do, I can't get the bonus, or the group doesn't include me. That foundational belief is again available to manage volatility from going up and down and up and down. But at some point, the belief gets in the way of, creating an interesting and amazing life. At some point, the belief gets in the way. And at that point, it's important to understand, because that we need to build other lives, like the future will be, or other beliefs, that the future is going to be better than the past, that I can create what I want here. You need to have beliefs like that so that you can see how to create what you want. And so the real shift that I'm bringing into focus is the transference of beliefs as something that are true, that are objective, that should not be changed, and are absolute, and are singular, into a belief allows us to see certain truths. Certain truths are more useful than others for different developmental stages, for different projects of reality creation. And that having beliefs is very useful because they are root assumptions that we can just put to the side and say, I'm not going to question those for this time, and I'm going to build on them for this time. However, when we're trying to create something that our beliefs are obscuring, meaning if I'm trying to create a happy marriage founded on the belief that I will never be happy, you're not going to build a happy marriage on that belief. But you could build a happy marriage on a belief that when two people are compatible, they can be happy most of the time with these types of activities. And that could be a useful belief to build a happier marriage on than the belief, I will never be happy. And so this then transfers the power, or it transfers the responsibility, the ability and willingness to respond, away from objective truth and towards the artist that is weaving the belief, weaving the values, and weaving the particular reality built on those beliefs.